is your intention, your thoughts, what's going on up here. Chi is your energy, and Li technically means muscular force. The connotation is that your mind, your thoughts, your intention leads your energy to create action. I decided to go to school when I was going to college. I was immediately told I had to change my embouchure. I went from being able, like the loudest note I could play on my horn was like a G above high C. I mean, I could peel paint with that note. I went for a year and a half not being able to consistently play a G on the top of the staff. While yes, you have to have the physical mechanisms in place, but you can have all the right technique, you can have the perfect embouchure, you can have all that stuff, but if the space between your ears isn't right, then it's never going to work for you. It's that thing of being able to identify what's going on and understand that you have the control over whether you run from it or you just lean into it. One of the things that I always point out is that there are two fundamental types of change. It's change by default and change by design. So you have an injury, that is a change by default. It's not like you're intentionally choosing the change, you're forced to by circumstances. Change by design is when you are intentionally creating a change to make improvement. I realized who I really was. I wasn't what I do because of who I am.
Hey, welcome back to the show, everybody. Today's a real treat for me and the guest that we have today, because this is the guy who actually really opened the door for podcasts in general for me. I remember when I was a wee young lad in my beginning years at BYU, I was like every other trumpet player my age, looking up YouTube videos on how to play higher, louder, and faster. And somebody had a trumpet themed YouTube channel, which I found out later was actually a podcast called the Trumpet Gurus Hang podcast, and had a lot of content about that subject and all other things trumpet. And little did I know at the time that this guy also was from Amish country, Pennsylvania, like me, and also would become kind of a guru to me in some ways about podcasting in general. Maybe a year and a half after that experience, I found myself on the phone with him talking about what it's like to start a podcast. And here we are a year after that. And so I'm so excited to introduce martial artist, trumpet guru, all of the above, José Johnson. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Clark. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this, man.
Me too. And we'll get the hang in person one of these days, very soon as well.
Hey, let's hope so. There's got to be some whoopie pies and some some stroopies in our future.
Stroopies, scrapple, all the good stuff.
No scrapple, man. No
scrapple.
No.
You know, I actually have not had the guts to try scrapple either. So 13 years of living there, and I never did. But anyway, colloquialisms aside, well, there's many things. We were just talking about this, but many reasons why I wanted to get you on the show, including, the fact that you had helped me get on this podcast train. But you were talking about some experiences that you maybe not had with like a performance-related injury, but things that were leading up to it, or that led to some unhealthy playing habits or some other health issues that you had, and something we haven't really talked about up to this point on the show, which is especially important for trumpet players, and I would imagine any wind player really, are embouchure changes, because those can be fairly debilitating on an emotional, mental, musical scale for a lot of people. And so if you want to kind of share that story and how that came about, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a profile for a second. So as I turn sideways, you'll see how I have a protruding lower jaw. It's typically called an underbite, right? So my lower teeth are past my top teeth, which is the opposite of most people. And so, because of the anatomical structure, my natural playing set was the one third top, two thirds bottom, and that was working. That was working for me. And so when I decided to go to school, when I was going to college, um, I was immediately told I had to change my embouchure. Now, uh, there was a reason for it, and I kind of understand why. My tone had become very strident, so very very bright and brassy. Um, and I mean, the first thing that my professor told me after I got accepted into the School of Music, he's like, "Oh, okay, we need to change your embouchure, we need to change your mouthpiece, we need to change your horn." Boom, all three same time,
All at the same time.
all at the same time. So at the time, I mean, I was this is 1980. 79, 80. I was fascinated, addicted somewhat to, playing higher, faster, louder. I was a huge Maynard Ferguson fan, as like most people my age. And I actually I was playing an MF horn. I was playing a jet tone mouthpiece. So it's like how Maynard like can you get? And my range, like, I could play, I could hit notes that were up into the triples. Uh, I didn't have a lot of endurance and I didn't have a lot of accuracy. Uh, but I mean, the mechanics, everything was working in a way that was allowing me to do that. So they took me off of the jet tone and put me on a 1.5C. Told me I had to get a new horn. They wanted me to get a Bach 37, but I was like, I don't have the money for that. I'm keeping this horn. And then they wanted me to play, two thirds upper, one third lower. I went from being able, like the loudest note I could play on my horn was like a G above high C. I mean, I could peel paint with that note. I went for a year and a half not being able to consistently play a G on the top of the staff.
Wow.
It's like I would get to the top of the staff and everything would just completely fall apart. So after a year and a half of this, my professor one day in my lesson just kind of looked at me and goes, "This isn't working. Just go back to the way you were playing." And that was a day that I decided I was going to leave the School of Music and go do something else, because it's like I felt like I had just wasted that amount of time trying to do something that was actually counterproductive to me. So, we'll fast forward to, I mean, it's about 20 years ago, I guess. I was studying locally with a guy who was former split lead player with the Jazz Ambassadors. And we're in my lesson and we were talking about stuff and he goes, "Yeah, I really can't help you with this because, the way you're playing, I don't understand the way your body type and stuff." He said, "I'm going to refer you to one of my friends, as a trombone player. His name's Doug Elliott, and he's an expert in the Reinhardt
Oh
methodology."
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so he said, "Talk to Doug because the stuff that you're trying to figure out, I think he would have a much better chance of helping you with that because he understands the embouchure and the structure a lot better than I do." So I went down to Doug and he asked me to play some stuff and I gave him my backstory. And he said, "The problem that you're facing is," because I was having problems with is connecting my mid upper register to my upper register. So there was just like a huge break and I would actually have to manipulate and it was just getting really goofy. He said, "Your problem is your body wants to play one way, and that's the natural way. And your mind is getting in the way because you've been told to do stuff that is contrary to the way that's most effective and efficient for your body type." And I was like, "Oh." And he's like, yeah, that's what it is. And so still to this day, I find myself fighting with trying to do things the the middle old way, the wrong old way, as opposed to, going back to the way that I naturally played the horn. So the level of frustration that anybody feels with dealing with embouchure change, man, I can certainly, understand that. I can empathize with that. But I think that it's too often that I've heard of people being forced to change their embouchure by a well-meaning, I will say, the professors aren't trying to be, they're not
Of
trying to
course,
ruin
yeah.
you, but they have limited knowledge sometimes in mechanics. They know how they play, and they're good teachers for the people who play like them, but they're not good teachers for people who have a different structure that they're working with. So, you know, it's a difference between being told to change your embouchure and being forced to change your embouchure. A lot of people, a lot of my good friends have had playing related injuries that have forced them to either shift their embouchure to the side or shift it up or shift it down. So they're avoiding scar tissue or, having to change the size of the mouthpiece, so to allow for the damage that has been done. So that's, I think when you have to change because of a physical injury, then that's one thing. But when it's just kind of wholesale change because, your prof doesn't like your tone or doesn't like the way you articulate or things like that, well, there's so many other ways that you can fix that other than just saying change your embouchure. And yeah, that's why I love people like, Bobby Shu and, Doug has been great and some of the other guys in the Reinhardt camp that are like Brad Good, just, guys that are so thoughtful about trying to get into what you want and what you need and what you've got working for you and what's working against you and helping you to find the best way for you to play as opposed to, oh, this is what, Herbert L. Clark or this is what Arbin or this is what, Schlossberg said about your embouchure. And if they said it, then it's the truth. Yeah, I think it's BS. So that's kind of my story on embouchure changes.
Yeah, and it's I was talking to I had one of my friends out here in Utah on the show who had a kind of like a more severe version of my injury happen to him.
Mhm.
And for both of us, when we found out that trumpet pedagogy really isn't a bunch of blanket statements, it's relative to how the person works physiologically, anatomically, but at the same time, the end goals are all the same, ease of playing physically and a good sound. That's, that's where everybody's trying to get to. It's just the manner of getting to it is kind of interesting. It can get kind of hairy. And, I've been through embouchure changes even before my injury. And I'm really glad that we were able to articulate this because really, like, what the reason why I wanted to do the show in the first place was because I wanted to give people an ability to express themselves because they know what it was like to not be able to musically express themselves. And embouchure changes fit in that camp, right?
Mhm.
You're not able to express yourself the way you're normally used to, and that is a loss, really. And so I'm really grateful that you were able to share that part of
Yeah.
the story with us.
Yeah. Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head when you said about we have the same objective fundamentally. But the path that we take has to be unique to us, not just in terms of, embouchure or equipment, but even sound. That was one of the things that all of the stuff that I went through with that change kind of created or exacerbated actually some mental issues that I had surrounding my playing, and it brought out all of the insecurities. And I mean, I remember when my professor was saying like how basically, I mean, I can't remember the exact words he said, but the essence was that, I had horrible tone, that I had a horrible tone. And that stuck with me. And, you know, I, I really struggled with that for years, and I still sometimes struggle with it from time to time. I feel myself slipping back in this. But then I've I came to this conclusion. Like I listen to a lot of pop music, like, most of us do. And I think about some of my favorite singers. And, it's like, I love Sinatra. Sinatra's great. He's got a he's got a great voice. I love Al Jarreau. Al Jarreau's got a great voice. And they can both sing the same song, but you'll be able to immediately pick out which one's which,
Absolutely. Yeah.
because they have a unique sound. We all have a unique sound. That is our voice. You should be able to hear someone's voice and recognize them by their voice. But I think in terms of pedagogy, for some reason, we've got stuck into this kind of, well, if you don't sound like Bud Herseth, then you don't have a good trumpet sound. Or, and certainly we have our standards, but it's like, if you're a lead player, if you don't sound like Wayne Bergeron, then you're not a good lead player. Well, I mean, Wayne's one of my dear friends, and he's, one of my idols in terms of being a trumpet player. But there are other trumpet players that are great lead players who I love as well. I mean, I love Frank Green's sound. I love Roger Ingram's sound. Love Mike Lovett's sound. Conrad Gazzo, if you want to go back further, but I can identify those guys by their sound because it's unique. It's not this kind of cookie cutter approach to playing. So while there are certain parameters that you want to work with, mostly, are you playing in the center of the pitch? Is your sound centered? Does it project? Does it blend? So, I mean, these are all kind of different things, and it doesn't have to sound the same to get the same effect or the same end result. So I think that in my level of frustration with the way that music pedagogy has gone is that it's become way too limited, way too siloed, in that there's only one sound that's acceptable. There's only one approach that's acceptable. There's only one horn that's acceptable, only one mouthpiece acceptable. No, there should be as many sounds as there are players.
Or
And,
voices,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I'm curious about this, this time of your career as well, in that, kind of diving into the, not kind of to take a left turn here, but the, what it was like to go through that from a mental standpoint of like not being able to express yourself during that year. You said it was a year and a half or something like that. And then moving forward, how that experience kind of led you to these other avenues that you've had, because one of the things I like to focus on the show is like during this time of recovery or change, if you will, what are the things that you do to stay in the game musically, to stay in the game psychologically, because these are the answers that so many musicians in these similar situations are looking for and they need desperately. And so, what was your experience with that side of the game?
Well, I had a lot of stuff going on. I mean, like so many of us, dealing with, feelings of inadequacy. You know, uh, I I guess my dad was, I mean, he's a minister when I was born, but before that, he was a professional singer and arranger. And he's one of those people who has perfect pitch, very annoying, and he's also was very opinionated. So when I would be practicing, which I mean, I love to play my horn. That was my release. Have a good day. I came home, I got my horn out and played. Have a bad day. Got home, took my horn
Amen
out
to
and
that,
played.
brother.
You
Yeah.
know, and that was my thing. And no matter what I did, I'd come downstairs and my dad said, "Oh, why are you doing that? Why are you practicing that way? Why are you doing this? And, you sound like this, blah blah blah." And so I kind of had a stigma about it. Then when I get to school and I go through the embouchure change and all this stuff, and your sound is horrible, and all this stuff that just kind of piled on. And I had when I was in high school, I already kind of had a little bit of a complex about uh, performance. Put me in a band, I'm great. Put me back in the section, fantastic. Ask me to come up front, I start freaking out. Uh, so
Me too.
uh, when you added that, when you compounded all of the other stuff on top of that fundamental kind of fear of, it's basically fear of failure. I didn't want to be out there, and I didn't just want to, cack and, that there goes my career sort of thing. Um, so I was always kind of that way. We get very, very nervous about doing any kind of solo, either playing a solo or God help me if I had to stand up in front of people and just do a solo piece. Um, so fast forward to say about 1989. Um, I I had taken martial arts when I was a kid. My dad got me enrolled in martial arts classes because of being beat up all the time, being bullied. Um, and I kind of got away from it when I started to get serious about music. But then I had just come off the road. I'd done a few years touring up and down the eastern seaboard with a band, and I I came home and it's like, I want to do something that's kind of fun because, like I said, trumpet was like my release. But when I was doing that full time, I was playing. We played 48 weeks a year. We took 2 weeks
Whoa.
off for the holidays. That was it. Through from Christmas to New Year's. We played New Year's one time. But we were playing like usually 5 nights a week, 48 weeks a year. So what happened was during that process, I started to get really frustrated because my release had always been music. I mean, I was playing, I was getting paid to play even when I was back in Ohio where I was going to school. But it wasn't like when you're playing, full time. And I lost the joy because, playing was then my job, and it wasn't like yeah, I can think like I'm getting paid. That's great. But when you start thinking, oh man, it's my job. I really don't feel like going to the gig tonight, but I got to go to the gig tonight. And so that created kind of another little weird mental shift in me. And so fast forward, I got off the road. I decided I wanted to get back into martial arts. And so I started studying martial arts. And part of the reason I did that is because I wanted to have something that I could do where I would be responsible for myself, but something different than music because I had too much baggage with my music. So I really wanted to learn how to put myself in front of people, put myself in challenging situations and not freak out. So that's where my training then started to kick in. And, I started to get more interested in concepts like the mental side of what I did, because with Chinese martial arts and specifically the styles or the methodologies that I was really into at that time, things like Tai Chi and the other kind of internal arts, it is so much about, your mind drives everything. And so as I went through all of my martial arts training and started to dive into the philosophy, first from the ancient philosophy, and then starting to get into like the new science, like the science of success, the neurosciences and things like that, and learning how the brain works, why the brain does things, and understanding concepts like flow and all that good stuff. Then I was able to reverse engineer that and apply it to my trumpet playing. Now, what I will say is that when I got really serious about my martial arts training, I stopped playing trumpet. I didn't play trumpet for 7 years while I
Oh,
was
interesting.
trying to get myself together. And I thought the best way to do that was just to walk away for a bit. I knew that I would come back, but I just needed to recalibrate myself. Now, it took me 7 years because I'm stupid. So, for you, it might only take you 7 minutes. But, I'm a slow learner. So
I'm
it
going
took
on
me
2 years,
7
brother.
years. So that's kind of how it started to to move me towards understanding that there's, while yes, you have to have the physical mechanisms in place, but you can have all the right technique, you can have the perfect embouchure, you can have all that stuff, but if the space between your ears isn't right, then it's never going to work for you. And, for me, that's what really has driven me to study so much more because I get to every day, whether it's me doing my coaching consulting that I do for like corporations and stuff, or it's me on a bandstand. Everything is about trying to get myself into the right mindset and let that drive what I do. And I think that that's one of the ideas that uh, in general, we should all be practicing some sort of mindfulness, because it helps you to be more focused. It helps you to better deal with stress and anxiety and all the other kind of stuff that we got to deal with. But for a performer, I think it's so critical. The greats do it naturally. I don't want to say naturally. It's just something that they've picked up. No one's ever told them how to do it. But for we average mortals, uh, sometimes we need a little help to understand how we have the power to get ourselves into a space where all of the previous training, all of the hours we spent in the practice room can finally come out of the horn, and we get out of our own way and just let the music speak for itself.
Hey guys, I just want to interrupt the show real quick and just tell you about something I've been working on for a long time that I'm so excited to share with you. Like I've said in the past, you have the potential to make your injury become a benefit to you, an asset to you. But at the same time, I know the feeling of being lost, not knowing who to turn to, where to go, what resources to use, all sorts of things, and also how to reframe the situation, the mental skills that's needed to be able to do that. And so if you are one of those people looking for that resource, that help, that coaching, I want to tell you about something I've been working on, and that is Musician Unchained. Musician Unchained is now the newest coaching platform for musicians going through injury. It is intended to help you view your situation in a way that benefits you and make the changes in your life that you need to become the best version of yourself because of your injury. Your injury being the impetus for that change. I would love to be able to help you in any way that I can, even if that means sending you somewhere else to someone who can better help you. And so if you are interested in working together one-on-one, visit our website, musicianunchained.com/let's hang for more details. All right, let's get back to the show. Oh my gosh. Dude, there's so many places I want to take this now. You just cracked the egg open. And, what's funny is as I was preparing for this interview, I came across, I didn't know you did this, but you have a couple other podcasts now, other than the Hang, and they're surrounding this subject. And so I was listening to a lot of those episodes in preparation for this. And, so I was an athlete before I was a musician. And one thing that always, and I grew up watching movies like Remember the Titans and When the Game Stands Tall. I'm a football guy, right? And
Yeah.
Glory Road in basketball. All these things where they've got that motivational aspect in their craft, just built in, right? And I'm not sure if the same dynamic is in martial arts. Quite frankly, the reason why I never got into it is because I never wanted to get punched in the face as a trumpet player. But, but that it just seems like athletes had always had that mental aspect of their craft built in. And, going back to the thing we were talking about, pedagogy is if we think about it, our craft is building a house. We always talk about the music, and people treat the music as the foundation for the house, but it's really the pedagogy. And then the house is the music and the artistry and everything like that. And then I think to take that a step further, the mental game is the foundation of our career as a musician. And, the house that's on top of the foundation, is everything else. But the thing that I have just really wondered, and I want you to kind of talk to this, based on your experience and your professional experience as well, is do you think, it's, how do we phrase this? The only way for this stuff to sink in is for it to be coming from a pain point. Because like injury is like a huge pain point, and it forces people to get into this stuff, or performance anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of people, and I think one of the hangups that we have in our culture as musicians is that if you haven't gone through an injury, or if you haven't really struggled with debilitating anxiety, you kind of just write off the mental stuff as like, it's not, I don't need that stuff. It's woo woo. It's, too ethereal for me.
Yeah, I mean, so I talk a lot about change management. That's one of the like popular topics that I get hired to speak about. And one of the things that I always point out is that there are two fundamental types of change. It's change by default and change by design.
Right.
So
right.
change by default is change that occurs because you have to change. So you have an injury, that is a change by default. It's not like you're intentionally choosing the change, you're forced to by circumstances. Change by design is when you are intentionally creating a change to make improvement. So while I think many of us fall into the trap of only changing out of the necessity, out of the default mode, that like for me, I'm back into the change by design mode. So I'm constantly playing with what I do and trying to adjust, fine tune, basically.
Yeah, totally.
The way I'm approaching the horn. And so I want to be on, I feel like all things considered at 63 years old now, I feel like I'm playing much better now than I did when I was in my 20s.
There you go.
I have better endurance. I have better accuracy. I feel like my sound is a little more consistent. Technically, I feel like I'm just a better player. And now, I play mostly in an events band, so I'm playing, weddings, and sometimes, we're doing like the last time we had this, because the sets kind of got screwed up because of speeches. We had to do like a 90-minute set, just top to bottom, just
yikes,
ouch, boom. And that was with like, I had been sitting around for 4 hours. I couldn't, re-warm up or anything. It's like pick up the horn in the first song, September, right? And then the last song is, something else. So it's just like bang, 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 bang. And I'm playing, songs that require me to, be able to, pick off high E's, high F sharps, double A's, things like that. That's the written part. So, but I'm at a point now where, like years ago, I would have been like, freaking out over something like that. Now I get done with a 3 or 4 hour gig, and I feel like I could still do another set. I'm fine. I'm feeling good.
Do you feel like that's specifically because of the inner game or the inner work that you've done?
That's the foundation of it. The inner work has got that. To me, it all starts with here. Yeah, everything else becomes manifested because of your thoughts and your beliefs. That's it. So that's the beginning. But then also I developed, what's commonly called a growth mindset, which is when things go wrong, I don't, I still, everyone's going, God, I can't believe I missed that. That's a C sharp.
Right.
So you still have those moments. But then like if I completely screw the pooch on a song, then the next day I'll go home and I'll work it. And I'm like, okay, well, why am I having problems with that? Let's try some alternate fingerings for that. Let's try approaching it a little bit different. Let's try, change the dynamics, the way I'm kind of shaping the line to see if that helps. And so I'm constantly trying to fine tune by researching my playing, what works, what didn't work, and then talking, that's why I've been taking a break from the trumpet podcast for a while. I apologize to my fans out there. It will be coming back.
Oh, cool.
Awesome. That's one of the reasons why I love doing it, because it's a chance to sit and talk with people and kind of pick up what they have, the way they're approaching things. And that's why I talk so much with my guests about their mindset and their experiences and stuff, more than like, how do you play a double high C? It's about more about what's going on inside of their head and inside of their hearts. Because if I can pick up on that, then I know I can figure out the mechanics to make that happen. That's really the easier part. But it's all this stuff, man. That's the juice. And like I said, earlier, I think that so many great players just kind of, they already have that perspective. Their minds are already working that way, and it's not until something goes wrong that they're forced to, you know, to look at a different perspective. But I think ultimately that it would behoove any student to approach their playing with a spirit of inquisitiveness. you know so regardless of you can have the greatest teacher in the world, but you should always question anything anybody says. One of my martial arts teachers told me that. He's like, don't take everything that I say as being gospel. He said, if I say something to you, always question it in your head, go home, practice it, try it. And if it works for you, then keep it. If it doesn't work for you, then you'll find something else. But don't just blindly follow. And I think for too many of us, that's kind of the trap that we fall into, is that whether it's, your high school teacher, your college prof, or, whoever you decide you're going to do privately study with, their word becomes gospel. And as great as any of them are, nobody's got all the answers. And not everybody, and even if they have the answers, they can't always explain it in a way that's going to make sense to you. So that's why I think, being able to absorb these things, to go home, get in the woodshed and try it out. And if it's not working, either go back for a refinement, see if you're actually doing the right approach. Or if you are doing the right approach and it's not working for you, you got to be willing to say, okay, this isn't my bag. Let's try something different.
Totally. You're answering questions I haven't asked yet. And gosh, the whole element of curiosity has really just been a game changer for me in my injury recovery and coming back and all that stuff. I think it's just a way of viewing the world that just honestly has taken away a lot of the anxiety that I felt about my injury, and it led me to come to the conclusion that you really are in charge of your own recovery. You're in charge of your own progress. You can't control it in every way that you want to, but you are in charge of influencing it. And I'm starting to get into this coaching sphere. This is technically the podcast of my new coaching company, Musician Unchained, by the time this comes out. And one thing I've learned about coaching in general, and I'm sure you would agree, is that coaching is really about facilitating the client finding their own answers, and we're starting to see that a little bit in the music education sphere. It's like, I'm not just going to talk at you for an hour. Here's some materials and let's see what you make of them. And then I'll, pop in here and there and see how you're doing, see how it can help. But at the end of the day, you're in charge. And that's something, especially I think for my generation, that's really hard to grasp, is to not hand over the reins to somebody else, but to really take control of that. And well, I don't even want to use the word control, but to influence it in the ways that we can.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of Stoic philosophy.
Oh yeah, me too.
And Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus and those
Right.
groovy guys. But the whole thing about control what you can control. Yeah, and the only thing you can't always control an outcome, but you can always control your response to it. And that's like a huge part of my coaching, which is a huge part of who I am as a person. It's like it's too easy to waste your time and energy on the things that are outside of your control, which are typically the outcomes. However, if you pay attention to the things that if you pay really close attention to the things that are in your control, then if you can control practicing regularly, you can control finding a teacher, you can control so many different aspects, your awareness, your focus on what you're doing. And if you do those things consistently, you have a greater probability of getting the outcomes you want. But most of us, that we don't want, well, most of us want to have somebody tell us what to do, because then when things go wrong, we can blame them. We don't have to take the blame
Absolutely.
ourselves.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
So, it's like, you got to own it. You own your successes, you own your failures. And that's it. And actually the failures, that's the juicy part. That's where you actually learn stuff. You don't learn by doing it right. You learn by doing it wrong. It's a process of elimination. So, being in that kind of mindset. But related to that was something when you were talking, I wanted to kind of point out one of the things that I talk a lot about, and actually I think is my next episode of my upcoming episode of my personal mastery and growth podcast. I talk about this concept of being rather than doing. And a lot of times we just think about that as like, oh, well, being just like being in the moment. Yeah, that's one of the things. But also it's about, who do you want to be? How do you want to be? So when I was talking about like my performance anxiety thing, I've kind of gotten over that. And the way I got over it was I learned, and this is kind of taking a left turn really quick, but I'll come back to my point, that the feelings, the physiological symptoms, and the root cause in terms of the hormones that are being secreted in your body, the neurotransmitters that you feel when you're nervous or anxious, are exactly the same as when you're excited.
Right.
There is no difference. So when I learned to reframe the feeling of butterflies in my stomach and my palms, getting sweaty and that sort of stuff, when I started to go, oh, this is my body preparing me to go out and do a killer performance, then I stopped trying to fight it and I embraced it and I used that energy to make my performances better. But it's that thing of being able to identify what's going on and understand that you have the control over whether you run from it or you just lean into it. And that's where like the concept of being comes in. Like when I go on stage as a performer, then I have a certain way that I want to be, how I want to show up. I want to be engaging. I want to be active. I want to exude this kind of energy that draws the audience in. I want to be open. So, I'm listening to my horn section mates or listening to the vocalist. And so there are certain ways that I need to be when I'm on stage. When I'm doing a one-on-one coaching call with someone, or if I'm doing a consultation with a company, I still had to have some of those, but then I have to be slightly different. I have to be maybe have to be a little more reserved, or I have to be a little more professional, whatever it is. So it's understanding, how do I need to be in this moment? And then when I can step into that role and be that person, then I will inevitably get the results that I want, because my actions, my thoughts and my beliefs and my actions are in alignment with what it takes to achieve my objective.
Totally. Yeah, you're speaking my language here, man. This is awesome. We could probably go for 4 hours. Well, I don't know about
my wife
that,
will kill me, but
yeah. But the thing I was thinking about when you were talking about that is my own personal experience, and I think most people who have gone through an injury, is they want to give, one of the reasons why they want to give control of their recovery to somebody else especially with regards to overuse injuries, where it's like somebody was over practicing or ignored the signals their body was sending them and all that stuff. They want to give control is because they lost trust in themselves, and so that concept of reframing, and changing who you're trying to become, I think is really important with that, because that puts the ball back in your court. That is helping you regain the trust that you once had in yourself. And I've had some very prominent players recently just tell me, like, through their injuries, it's like they just, things they had never worried about before. All of a sudden, they're just like, their confidence is completely just gone because of what they've been through. And I think in order for them to regain that confidence, this is something that they have to do, is reframe their thinking to get the ball back in their court, that they are in control of or in charge. I'm going to start saying in charge. They are in charge of their recovery. They are in charge of their progress, but they can't necessarily control every outcome,
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, when I took those 7 years off, I was really focusing on what was important to me at the time, what was my priority. And I knew deep down in my heart that I would come back to music in some way, shape, or form. Now, with that being said, and, talking about like being sort of thing, I want to kind of make an important distinction, specifically as it relates to injuries and things that affect our ability to do what we have been doing and what we love doing. So I used to my main martial arts mentor. I used to live with him. I lived with him for like a year and a half. Lived in his basement. You know, and the reason I lived with him was because his wife, who was a professional dancer, choreographer. She taught dance at a couple, Case Western and a couple of the colleges, and so she's a very, very well known and well respected dancer. She contracted Lyme disease. Now, this is back in the early '90s. There was little known about Lyme, and as a result of her Lyme and the fact that it had gone so long untreated, she developed a really debilitating case of rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh man.
And to the point where there's about a 6-month period where she couldn't get out of bed. Like, her husband had to like get her out of bed, and she had to use a walker and, all this stuff. And it just, it really tore her down. And I remember having a talk with her as she came out of this, long, dark night of the soul. She said, the hardest part of this for me was I was always Kathy the dancer. And I had to come to grips that I will never be Kathy the dancer again. But I realized who I really was. I wasn't what I do. I do because of who I am. And that has kind of stuck with me, that I am Jose the musician, the trumpet player. I'm Jose the coach, Jose the speaker. I'm Jose the podcaster. I'm all these are all just different facets of who I am. But if the day comes that I can no longer play trumpet or play music of any type, that doesn't make me any less of a person. It just means that I can't express myself through that venue anymore. And it may be painful, but it doesn't mean the end of my life. And I think that so many people, especially high level people, I mean, people that are at the top of their game, you see this in music, you see this in sports, you see this, across the board, that you reach a point where you're no longer at the top of your game. And because you're not that guy anymore, that you start to question, who am I? And because your identity is so wrapped up in what you do. So I think one of the healthiest things that any of us can do is to create that awareness and that separation between these are the activities that I choose to do to express an aspect of who I am. But I can express that through a variety of ways. And that's why I still, am actively involved in martial arts and still actively involved in music and all that stuff. All these to me are different facets of who I am, and they're ways of expressing what my core values are, which are learning, having fun, and sharing. If I can do those three things, then my life is perfect as far as I'm concerned. But I can do that in so many different ways. I can learn more about trumpet. I can learn about coaching. I can learn about neuropsych. I can learn about all kinds of things, and I can share that information. And I can have fun and let other people have fun through the process as well. So I'm not I'm not beholden to just this one way of doing things. There has to be the options have to be in front of you. And I think that when you were recovering, particularly as we're recovering from an injury, or you're going through an embouchure change, or any of these sort of things, having these career crises and things like that, that if you can kind of separate yourself, kind of a mindfulness technique, being non-judgmental and just saying, okay, well, here's the situation. All right, this is what it is. Now, what am I going to make out of it? What are the steps that I want to take? Where do I really want to see myself? And then what am I willing to do in order to achieve that? Because there's always a cost involved.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the show. I just wanted to jump in here real quick and tell you about something that I'm really, really excited about. For a while now, I have wanted to create an even more effective resource than just the podcast that injured musicians can go to receive the support that they need. And recently I did just that. So write this down. Trust the Process Podcast Injured Musician Support Group. I know it's a long title. We're still working on that part. But this is a place where people can go now, injured musicians and even musicians who have gone through injury in the past, and people that help musicians go through injury, where they can go to receive the support that they need, whether that be ask questions, share their victories, share their frustrations, and overall just receive the community and the support that they need in a very proactive, intentional way. And so I just ask that you guys support these injured musicians by sharing this group with them, that they can receive the support that they need. Okay, enjoy the rest of the show. Totally. That's the goal that I have for every listener of the show who's going through something like an injury, is to find out that, to come to the conclusion themselves, that this is an element of their expression, but it's not them. It's not their identity. And I think, and that does take this investment in the inner game, the inner work of mindfulness, of mindset, and all that stuff. That's the reason why I do the show, because I believe to my core now that as you do that work, whether or not you're going through an injury or whatever, it's just going to bring so much more of a richness to your expression on your instrument or in whatever medium you choose. And, something that I wanted to really pick your brain about was in martial arts and just Eastern methodologies, practices, philosophies. What have you found are the biggest differences between those and Western practices and philosophies, especially regarding progress, personal growth, coming back from trials and things like that? Like, what have you noticed, and how's that influenced your life experiences?
Well, there are a couple. One, especially the older, the more ancient traditions, tended to emphasize circular thinking as opposed to linear thinking. And here in the West, we are very linear in our thinking.
Definitely.
It's very much cause and effect. Now. Because a lot of the kind of the older, especially like the Taoist texts, particularly like the I Ching, the Book of Changes, to me, those theories are very closely related to concepts in quantum physics.
Oh, interesting.
So instead of thinking that there's a cause and effect, it's cause, not you do this, then you get this. It's that there's a natural progression. And if you understand where you are in a cycle, that you have the ability to kind of float. It's like, being able to determine which way a stream is going. And you kind of, go with the flow of things. So that's been really kind of foundational to my approach on a lot of things is that it's not this linear thing. There's a circular nature to things. Um, in my early training, one phrase that I learned was it's just this yi chi li. Yi is your intention, your thoughts, what's going on up here. Chi is your energy, and li technically means muscular force, like strength through your muscles. So the phrase, when you take it out of the just the straight translation, the connotation is that your mind, your thoughts, your intention leads your energy to create action. And that is like boom for me,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
when I was coaching people, when I was doing my martial arts school full time, that was one of the big things. Is like when people would have trouble with something, they come in for a private lesson or something, I would sit and talk with them a lot. And just kind of like, well, let's talk a little bit. And it's like, okay, well, tell me why you're here, and tell me what's going on. And it's like, well, don't you want to see me? I'm like, nah, let's just talk for a while. Because what I was doing is I was listening for the words that they use consistently and somewhat unconsciously. And that would tell me so much about their mindset, how they're thinking about things, because that's what drove the action. So I would listen to them, and then say, okay, now do something. And then I watch them and I go, oh, well, when you're doing this, you're thinking that. And they're going, how do you know that? I'm like, well, because, you basically told me first through your speech, and then when you moved, I saw that manifested in your movement. So if we want to change your movement, we got to change the way you're thinking about it.
Boom.
And yeah, that's it. And so like when we think about like for music, if you think, yeah, like Henry Ford said, whether you think think you can't, you're
You're
right.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
So like if you think you're going to flub a section, like, crap, I always blow this one section of the Haydn or the Hummel or whatever. It's like, if you're thinking that way, you're setting yourself up to actually fail, right? If you think that you're going to nail it, not saying that you're going to do it 100% of the time, but you're going to be much closer than if you have the negative thoughts. Um, and then also, it's not just exactly the things that you're thinking, it's the way you're thinking. So the way you think affects the way you breathe, because your breath and your intention are connected, right? If you're in a mental state where everything is like buzzy, 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 thousand thoughts, then your breath is going to be more shallow. If you're very depressed, your energy's down, your breath is going to be low, but also very shallow. It's not because you're kind of compressing the thoracic area and you're just kind of having that sort of breathing. So if you, as a trumpet player, if your mind is not in the right place, or any kind of brass player, any kind of wind player, if your mind is focused and clear and it's energized, not anxious, not depressed, but just very clear, very centered, and your thoughts are smooth. So you're not jumping from thing to thing, because as soon as you start jumping from thing to thing, then the energy in your body starts jumping, and then you become very chaotic. When you get into the zone, your thoughts are clear and they're smooth, which means that your breath is going to be clear and smooth, which means your technique is going to be clear and smooth. So it all works together. But if there's going to be a change, the change either needs to start here or it needs to start with the breath, because your mind and your breath can't be disconnected. One of them will win if they're going opposite directions. It's a tug of war. So the one that's the strongest, which is generally your thinking, is what's going to pull you in one direction. But that's why you can use your breathing techniques to change your mindset, because if your mind is going like this and you can consciously slow your breathing and smooth it out, not like slow tense, but just very, very slow, fluid in and out, almost like playing a legato phrase, then your mind has no choice but to match that state. And then that's going to affect then the physiology in terms of how we manipulate, our embouchure and our fingers and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's this thing. I don't know. I don't think this is based in Eastern or traditions, but it certainly sounds like it. There's this branch of coaching called neurolinguistic programming,
Yeah.
and I'm
Hmm.
sure you're familiar with it. It's something
Hmm.
I'm actually going to be working this next year and getting certified in. And that's exactly what it is: is your thought patterns, your speech, how you are verbalizing different things, how you're conceptualizing. It manifests itself physically and
Uh-huh.
also in how you act, how you behave with other people, how you um, even approach your intentions for like goal setting and things like that. It's very much applicable in all these different aspects of our lives. And I don't think there could have been a better advertisement or promotion for this type of stuff to work in somebody's life that hasn't necessarily gone through a traumatic thing that's forced them into it. So anybody out there who's listening that hasn't gone through something like that, I hope you know now why this is so important. you know,
Yeah. 'Cause, it's going to happen.
it's going to
Yeah,
happen.
it's going to happen. It happens to all of us because it's like for the 30 years that I was pretty much a full-time martial artist, either competing or teaching or things that I did. Um, I kind of prided myself in never having any major injuries. Now, I did have some minor injuries. I say minor. I blew out both of my shoulders at separate times, and I've popped my hamstrings more times than I could count. I had a knee injury, which oddly enough, it was a meniscus tear. Oddly enough, had nothing to do with my martial arts training. It had to do with me sitting in the basement working on arrangements for a show that I had coming up in 2 weeks. And I was working at my computer and I was spinning back and forth like from my manuscript paper to my laptop to my keyboard and doing this. And I did that for like about 8 hours. And I got up out of the chair and my knee popped.
Oh man.
And I went to the doctor and he's like, yeah, well, after you reach the age of 50, the most common causes for meniscus tears are actually getting up from chairs. So
Wow. Okay.
that's the most common cause. I'm like, ah. It would have been much better for like, yeah, I got attacked by like 30 guys and
Or you blew up playing on double high C or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. I was standing on one leg playing a double C,
There you
and
go.
balancing, something on my head. No, no. So I didn't have any injuries like major injuries, but because I was using my body all the time, now that I'm not training as intensely, I realize that I have done some damage to my body just because, like people say, "Oh, well, you're this Tai Chi master. You shouldn't have these problems." I'm like, "Well, yeah, if I was like you and I, came to class 2 or 3 times a week or maybe practiced an hour a day, great. But when you're doing this, 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, your body's going to wear down and it's going to wear out." So, I
Same thing
think
with
all of us.
trumpet.
Yeah, exactly. So all of us, because of and this is kind of like I have a lo I don't wanna say love-hate relationship. I question the validity of this. I know people who are like, "I cannot take a day off." And basically you're telling, like, their students, "You have to play every single day. You do not miss a day." Like the old saying, "You miss a day, you miss, 2 days, your bandmates know, you miss 3 days, everybody knows." Well, there's some validity to that, but for me, I feel like if I don't give myself a break because I'm putting so much physical demand on this very small area of muscles, that if I don't occasionally give it a break, it's gonna break. It's just, there is no way that you can keep
Case
that
in
up.
point.
So, it's being able to be okay with taking time off, because taking time off, the rest is where actually the growth occurs. Like
Exactly.
you talk to a bodybuilder, you're not building muscle while you're lifting. You're building muscle in the recovery phase. So I think sometimes as trumpet players or brass players, because I know there are more than trumpet players, but we're the coolest instruments in the world anyway.
Yeah.
So if we don't give ourselves adequate rest and recovery time, you may be okay for, a year or 10 years or maybe even 20 years. But eventually something's going to happen. You're going to reach that tipping point and your body's just going to say, screw you, man, we're out. And then you're going to be forced to take that downtime. So if you can build that in, whether it's I know some guys it's one day a week or once every other week or just once a month, they'll take a day or two off. Um, it's allowing the physical to rest, and it's also allowing the mental side to rest.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
I think we need to have that separation sometimes, because that's then when we come back, then we're just like really excited.
Yeah,
So
going back to what you were saying before, so Eric Whitaker, the composer, every semester he posts this thing where on his social media where he says, about this time in the semester, all of you music students out there are probably questioning why, I'm paraphrasing, but questioning why you even got into this in the first place. A music degree is a beautiful thing, but it can squeeze all the love in life you had for your passion. And
yep.
so, so he's basically telling them to cut themselves some slack. This is usually in like midterm season when he posts this.
Mhm.
And I remember this fear. This is what drove me to my injury, was the fear of taking a break with regards to falling behind and stuff like that. And so just the trust, I mean, the whole reason why the logo is the way my sister designed this, the reason why I had her do it this way is because you can't rush a plant growing. You can do things that influence it. You can get better fertilizer. You can do all these different
Mhm.
things. But at the end of the day, it's still got to do its job. And if you
Right.
suffocate it, it can't do its job. And from a neuroscience standpoint, that rest, just like with our body, that's where the real growth is
Mhm.
happening, is it during those resting periods, both short-term rest and long-term.
Yeah.
So you're spot on with that.
Yeah.
Do you have something to add with that?
Well, I was going to say, you know, one of the blessings that I've had is also the curse, which is having a mindset that allows me to kind of just shut things out and just hyper focus.
Me as
Um,
well.
so, and I would hazard to say that's part of why you got into the trouble that you got into in terms of
Yeah.
because what I was able to do, I developed the ability to like I was talking about, like blowing out my hamstring, and that I had that happen like a couple days before a competition, and I still went out and I still won. But I was in a hell of a lot of pain before I stepped into the ring, and I was in a lot after the adrenaline wore off.
Yeah.
But during it, it was just like, I'm not going to feel anything. I'm just going to focus on what I got to do. So that's a skill, but it's a skill that also got me into trouble, because then, you go beyond what your body is capable of doing at that moment, or should be capable of doing. You're going based off of what the 100% version of you could do, but you're not functioning optimally, but you're pushing yourself to that level and blocking out the signals. So that's good in a way, but it gets you into so much trouble, because that leads to these kind of overuse injuries, of repetitive stress injuries, things like that, where if you had just backed off, if you had just taken that day off, you just quit 8 bars before, you'd be fine. But it's just that, like, I gotta push, I gotta push, I gotta push. That's inevitably what gets us into a lot of trouble. And yeah, I think probably one of the things that really helped me to learn that was some problems that I had after I was diagnosed with prostate cancer,
Right. Yeah.
and I had surgery, had a lot of complications from the surgery. Finally, it was supposed to be like I was going to be out for like a week, and it turned into I was in the hospital for almost a month, and
Oh man.
I was out of commission for about 6 months. Um, But my doctor said, "Oh, you'll be able to go back to doing everything that you need to do uh, within like 6 to 8 weeks." And I'm like, "Okay, are you sure?" It's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, you'll be fine." And so he didn't understand that in both my martial arts practice and in my playing, the amount of pressure that is created in the abdomen.
Right.
And I basically just like, okay, time's up, let's go. And I'm just going full at everything. And I created an incisional hernia. So I ripped
Oh man.
open internally and had it repaired. Same thing. Okay, you'll be fine in 6 weeks. Be good as new. Ripped it again. So I've had like five. I've had a total of 7 abdominal surgeries.
Wow.
Um, and with each one, I've started to learn. Okay, what can I do? What shouldn't I do? And what can I absolutely not do? And it was really hard for me at first to back off on some of the crazy stuff that I used to do, and just be able to say, nope, it's not that important to me anymore to do, this crazy stuff. It's more important for me to be able to function for the next, you know, 40 or 50 years. So I think when it comes to our playing, we do the same thing, which is, like I was saying earlier, we kind of ignore the signals and we think that because we used to do it, or because someone else said that we should be doing it, or because the guy next to us is doing it, that we've got to do it the same way. No, you've got to find what works for you and what works for your body and what works for your situations and learn to adjust and adopt and adapt because, if we don't do that, then we're just continually tearing ourselves down and never building ourselves back up again. And then that's inevitably going to create a structural collapse.
Yeah. Talking about the tearing yourself down thing, I used to think that taking yourself to fatigue as a trumpet player was the way you did that. And by not taking any rest days and all that stuff. And not to belabor the point, but just you can't if you're tearing down constantly, you're eventually going to get torn up, right? And you're going to and you're not going to be able to build back. The damage will have been done and your body won't be able to do that. Your mind won't be able to do that without some serious rest on your part. I'm curious. I'm glad you mentioned your experience with cancer. I know there's a lot of people in my audience that will be glad that you did that. Could you see a difference in how you handled that situation because of your work with mindfulness, mindset, and martial arts and all that stuff? Could you see a
Oh
difference in
yeah,
how you handled that?
absolutely, absolutely. Um, Yeah, I won't lie to you and say that it didn't bother me at all. It bothered me. When I first got the diagnosis, I was, like, really scared,
Yeah,
um,
totally.
and then, when I went through all the surgeries, I was really scared, and I was really depressed, but that's natural, right? That's the one thing I try to get
Absolutely.
people to understand is that just because I'm this mindfulness master doesn't mean that I don't get upset, I don't get sad, no, these are all emotions, and emotions are natural, and emotions serve the purpose. There's no Tony Robbins, I think is the first person I ever heard say that there's no such thing as a good or a bad emotion. There's just improper. It's like,
Yeah.
laughing is a fantastic emotion unless you're at a funeral. That's
Right.
then that's an inappropriate response, right? So
Helpful or not helpful is how I usually think
yeah,
about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when we think about how that helped me was I was able to acknowledge what I was feeling. I was able to accept my circumstances as they are at that moment, but also know that I have the ability to choose how I'm going to move forward. And I knew that sitting around wallowing in despair wasn't going to help me. If anything, it was going to make my situation worse.
Absolutely.
So by embracing kind of more of a positive mindset and choosing to, make adjustments in my life and, learn from my mistakes, then that I could continue to have a high quality of life. And I think the biggest lesson, though, that it taught me was really the importance of being present. So my mindfulness helped me to get through it, but it also helped my mindful practices because I really, if you have because fundamentally, if they hadn't performed the surgery when they performed the surgery, it would have metastasized. They just caught it in time.
Oh,
And
awesome.
in the surgeries I've had post, I've had 4 times when I was in the hospital and basically almost died because of some complications. And so I've been close to death a few times. And what that has taught me is that you cannot take any moment for granted. You know, every day I make the conscious decision to be the best version of myself for this day because I'm not guaranteed tomorrow. So I want to make the biggest impact that I can on others. I want to do the things that bring me joy and bring me a sense of fulfillment. So if I do that today and I don't live tomorrow, I could say, to whoever I see when I pass to the other side, I can say, yeah, this was my best day. But if I live to see tomorrow, then I want tomorrow to be my best day. So, but I'm trying not to hold off and say, well, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, then I'm going to do the things that bring me joy. No, every day I'm doing the stuff that brings me joy and brings me that sense of fulfillment because I know this could be my last opportunity. So I want to take the best and make the best out of it. And that's the blessing that I got from my health battles. And that's the one I try to share with people is that, you know, your life is short. So don't be afraid of death. Be afraid of not living. And that's something you've got a choice over. You don't always have control over when you're going to die, but you do have control over when you're going to start living. So start living right now.
Absolutely. And I love how you made that distinction about those types of emotions, because when I first, started going through this journey, my own personal journey, it wasn't the first time I experienced like anxiety or depression, but it was definitely the strongest time. And what I learned was that you can't run away from those things. You just got to move through them, recognize what they are and be aware of them, but then recognize that there's a difference between experiencing those things and like throwing a pity party for yourself and not living, right? And I love something, as kind of we're moving towards a close here, you say something on, I think it's your podcast, personal, what's it called again? It's a personal
mastering growth.
Mastering growth. You say it is what it is, but it becomes what you make it. And that, like, I'm kind of jealous that you say that, because I kind of want to steal it now for this show, but because I'm such a firm believer that no matter where your injury takes you as a musician, it becomes what you make of it. Some people, they'll just give me the tools to get back physically and I'll just move on with my life. But for me, and I sincerely hope for all the people out there listening that's going through an injury or any sort of adverse situation, is that you are able to take that experience and make something of it and change your life and your habits, whatever you need to improve your quality of life, because you want to be living the fullest of every day. It's kind of a cliche phrase, but there's a reason why it's a cliche phrase, So, well, Jose, thank you so much for being here and being willing to share your stories and everything.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And, just a shout out to you, man. I remember we had that conversation.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, good luck, kid. And you've done a phenomenal job. You've really, you've grown into the role of a host. You're getting some great guests and getting some really important insights and getting it out to people. And I appreciate it because, I intimately understand the process.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people don't understand the amount of time and energy that we invest in doing stuff like this, which is why I had to take a break from the guru's hang, is because I just had too many other things going on, and I just couldn't figure out a way to make it fit with the
Yeah.
other stuff that was at that point, which is much more important because it's the stuff that's actually helping me pay my bills.
Right.
But I do want to also say, like, I love the title, Trust the Process. And if there's one thing that would like to leave as a parting thought, is simply that: trust the process. There's a way, whatever you're experiencing now, whether it's a physical injury, whether it's a mental, emotional issue, whether it's something not related to music, it's a relationship sort of thing, whatever it is, there's a way, there's a process. And once you find the process, you just have to trust in it, because you can't rush it. Like you
Can't
said,
rush it.
you got to let it, you've got to give it time to work. But when you do that, you have to do it from a place of trust, or some people would say faith, belief, however you want to phrase it. You have to firmly believe that what you're doing is going to be beneficial. And like one of my martial arts teachers says, first thing is you got to believe it's going to help you. Second, you got to do whatever it is that you're supposed to do. And then third, don't do anything to screw it up.
Yeah.
So for everybody out there, whatever you're going through, find the process, trust the process, and then just get out of the way. Let it do its job. Don't try to push it. Put the energy in that you need to, and then when you've reached that point where you've maximized what you can control at that moment, then be willing to let go and put it in the hands of a higher power.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that, because that was actually something I was wanting to ask you. I asked a couple of questions to wrap up everything with my guests, and one of them actually was influenced by kind of the conversation we had way back when. It was, I've told you the story before, but I was able to get in touch with Brad Good because of your podcast and everything, and get his advice and work with him a little bit through my injury. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is, if you were to come across somebody who had listened to you on my show that's going through an injury, maybe what would be a piece of advice or a mindfulness tip or something that you could give them? So I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I thought what you just said was so beautiful.
Yeah, well, that's fundamentally it. Just a practical tip is seek out somebody who's gone through something similar. So if like going back to like Wayne, talking about Wayne, when Wayne got diagnosed with his cancer, I was one of the first people he called,
Mm,
because he knew that I had gone through it, and he wanted to talk to somebody who understood, even though we didn't have the same kind of cancer. He
right.
just wanted to talk to somebody who could empathize with him, not so much commiserate, but just be able to say, yeah, man, I know what you're feeling. you know, if you need a friend, if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. But you're gonna get through this. I know you well enough to know that you're not gonna let anything hold you down. So just believe in yourself. So if he, and I'm sure he talked to other people, but people who didn't have that personal experience couldn't shed that kind of insight. So talking to someone who's gone through whatever it is you've gone through is a great way of at least getting pointed in the right direction, because they're speaking from a level of experience.
Absolutely. Very well put. The last question I like to ask people, and then I got a little mini bonus one for you, is
Oh boy.
if you could go back to your experience with embouchure change, and I would say even just to the juncture of when you started getting to martial arts and that pain point that kind of caused you to go into it,
Uh-huh.
if you could time travel back to that point and you had the opportunity to take away those pain points, would you, or would you leave them there?
Um, I would say I wouldn't. Simply because uh, I like where I'm at right now. I'm happy with who I am, and would I like to accomplish more? Would I like to be better? Yeah, certainly. But I know that where I am is a result of where I was, what I've gone through or the things that have shaped me. And those adversities uh, really have helped to shape me and to develop a level of resilience in me. Now, I didn't feel like it at the time, but I've come through all that, and I know right now, like if I had to go through another embouchure change, that I could do it. That I've got the mental capacity and the fortitude to be able to do it. I just don't want to have to do it again. So,
Of course not.
but
Yeah.
but the past has prepared me for the future. So the lessons that I learned from those hardships have given me a very unique insight. So while they were painful, I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah. And that's what I love asking. It's my favorite question to ask because going back to what we were saying about making what is what it is, or making something of what is, if you will.
Yeah.
It's that's the whole goal of everything we do here. And so anyway, the last question I have, and this question may sound familiar to you, but what do you want your legacy to be?
Uh, well, that's an easy one. I just, and it's been said by so many other people. I just want to leave the world a better place than the way I found it, the way I came into the world. I want to make an impact, not for the sake of ego, but I want to make an impact in the world that lives long beyond me. And that impact I want to be is that because of my interactions with people, whether it be teaching or just talking to somebody, that they are given the confidence to go after their dreams, that they are inspired to grow into a better version of themselves. So, if I can do that, if I can touch lives in that way and make the world a better place through that, then that's the best legacy that I think anybody could ever hope for.
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you so much for all of your insights and expertise today. It's just been wonderful to talk to you, man.
It's my pleasure, and I would like to give a shout out to cousin It here.
There you go.
This is the official broadcast expose of my wonderful custom colored Barkley Infinity microphone. So that's why it was.
If anybody's
fuzzy
been wondering
down
on the YouTube video what that thing was, it's a microphone.
it's my windscreen. So yeah.
Very,
So
very
it's all
good microphone. Yeah. To everybody out there in podcast land, thank you so much for joining us today. Very, very grateful for you. And I hope you feel like this has been time well spent, and that you have a lot of work to go out and do. If you want, send me a text. I'd love to hear from you about your thoughts about this show. In the show notes, there's a link for that. There's also a link if you want to support the show. We very much appreciate that. We'd love for you to do that. And until next time, keep on keeping on and keep trusting the process. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of Trust the Process, the official podcast of Musician Unchained, the newest coaching program dedicated to helping musicians navigate and overcome injury. But before you go, I have a few quick ways you can stay connected and support our growing community. First of all, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me a text with the link below and share your thoughts, questions, or just say hi. You can also check the show out on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We also would love to see you in our Facebook support group, Trust the Process Podcast Injured Musician Support Group. If you found value in today's episode, consider making a donation to support our mission of empowering musicians worldwide. Every contribution helps us create more content and resources for you, so visit link number 2 below to support the mission. If you decide to donate, I'll send you my newest resource, the Injured Musician Toolkit, which is an ebook designed to give you tools to help you get through your injury. Subscribe to our newsletter to get exclusive insights, tips, sneak previews of episodes, and announcements straight to your inbox. Act now and I will send you a free gift. So sign up at www.musicianunchained.com/newsletter. And if you or someone you know would like to go deeper with me in the topics of injury and mindset, head over back to musicianunchained.com and check out the Let's Hang tab. As always, I want to thank Daniel Baldwin, my audio engineer, and my sister Dana Lovell for her help with the promotional materials. There is no podcast without them. But before I go, I wanted to tell you how much I deeply appreciate your time and support. You are not alone on this journey. There are musicians and educators out there who need this resource, and we need to get it to them. Together, we are breaking the chain of old habits and thought patterns that don't serve us anymore, and unchaining the potential within ourselves to face each challenge with strength and resilience. So, as I always say, keep on keeping on and keep trusting the process. Until next time.